Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for a quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. This week on the Workplace Minute, we're revisiting 3 workplace issues that once dominated the conversation, but have received less attention more recently. They may have moved out of the headlines, but they haven't gone away. And in many cases, the predictions, the promises, and the controversies have now given way to broader questions about cost, access, implementation, and who ultimately benefits. For our final show in the series, I want to talk about remote work. A few years ago, it seemed impossible to talk about the future of work without talking about remote work. Every week brought another headline. One company announced a return to office mandate, and another embraced permanent flexibility. And employees debated productivity, collaboration, the cost of commuting, and work-life balance. And executives argued about innovation and culture. Remote work became perhaps the defining workplace story of 2022 and 2023. Today, the conversations have become much quieter, not because the issues have disappeared, but because something more important happened. The workplace began to settle into a new reality. And if you followed the headlines over the last year or so, you might conclude that employers have largely won the return to office debates. Large organizations like Amazon, JP Morgan, Chase, AT&T, and others have announced stricter in-office expectations, and many CEOs have become much more vocal about the value of working together in person. But if we step back and look at the broader labor market, the picture is much more nuanced. Now, according to Gallup, among employees whose jobs can be performed remotely, hybrid work has become the dominant model. Roughly 52% now work in a hybrid arrangement, while 26% work fully remote, and only about 22% work entirely on-site. Those numbers have remained remarkably stable over the past 2 years, suggesting that the labor market has reached a new equilibrium rather than continuing to swing back towards pre-pandemic norms. And office occupancy data tells us a similar story. The average office is certainly busier today than it was in 2021 or 2022, but attendance remains well below pre-pandemic levels across most major metropolitan areas. Employees have largely settled into predictable hybrid schedules, with Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays becoming the busiest office days, while Mondays and Fridays are significantly quieter. In other words, offices didn't disappear, but they have changed. And perhaps the biggest lesson from the past several years is that employers gradually stopped asking whether employees should come into the office and started asking a different question. Why should they want to? And that shift matters. Early return to office policies often focused on mandates. More recently, many organizations have begun redesigning offices to explicitly support collaboration over individual work. And they've invested in better meeting space, social gathering areas, team events, food programs, benefits for commuters, and coordinated team schedules that make time in the office feel more purposeful and meaningful. And the most successful organizations increasingly recognize that if employees spend an hour or two commuting simply to work all alone or to sit on video calls all day, then the office has failed to deliver on its value proposition. And at the same time, employees have changed as well. Remote and hybrid work are no longer viewed as temporary accommodations. For many workers, flexibility has become the expected part of the employment relationship, particularly for knowledge workers. It's become part of how people evaluate job opportunities, manage their caregiving responsibilities, reduce their commuting costs, and achieve better integration between their work life and their personal life. Now, of course, that doesn't mean every job can or should be performed remotely. Healthcare workers, manufacturing employees, hospitality workers, retail, transportation, first responders, and so many others have always performed their work in person. Even within office environments, some organizations legitimately benefit from greater physical proximity and collaboration, depending on their business model, their customer needs, their security requirements, or simply their culture. The important lesson is that the last few years have shown us that there's just no universal answer. What works for an investment bank may not work for a software company. What works for a hospital certainly doesn't work for a consulting firm. And perhaps that's why the hybrid work model has proven so durable. It allows organizations to tailor flexibility to the work itself rather than forcing every employee into the same model. And at the same time, new organizational challenges have emerged as well. Managers continue to wrestle with maintaining culture across distributed teams. Younger employees often need more coaching and mentoring than remote environments typically provide. Leaders worry about innovation, collaboration, and informal learning that happens when people work together in person. And employees continue to worry about things like flexibility, commuting costs, work-life balance, and whether being less visible could affect promotions and career advancement. All those tensions haven't disappeared. They become part of everyday management. And maybe that's the most surprising thing at all. For several years, we talked about remote work as a debate with winners and losers. Would employers win? Would employees win? Would eventually everyone just return to the office? The answer turned out to be something different. Neither side really won. Instead, workplaces simply evolved. And organizations discovered that flexibility could become a competitive advantage for recruiting and retention. And employees discovered that flexibility also comes with greater personal responsibility, the need for intentional communication, and new expectations around performance and accountability. We can probably say at this point it seems like the future of work is unlikely to be fully remote or fully in person. It will intentionally be flexible. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson from the last several years. The debates around remote work were only partially about where people worked. They're about whether organizations can build cultures based on trust, outcomes, and flexibility rather than proximity. And those challenges don't end when employees return to the office. In many ways, they're only beginning. A big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. Be sure to subscribe to the HR Happy Hour Network on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.